Okay, weekly roundup. It's been a while. Glad to get back into it. Weekly roundup is just whatever I find interesting to talk about during the week. Sometimes I'll talk about Tanya. Okay, the Tanya this week I don't find as, for whatever reason, as interesting as other subjects. Maybe I shouldn't have said that recorded, but that's just what it is. I find what's the big thing this week? We have Lag BaOmer. That's something I'm very much looking forward to. We got Lag BaOmer. We have what's called the Siyum HaRambam. We complete the book of Rambam, which I'll talk about in a moment. What does that even mean? And who's we? And then we have Parshas Behar, which is a very short, cute little parsha. Sort of focuses around one main thing, the Jubilee year, the Shemitah year. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But here we go. Thursday night, we got Lag BaOmer. The biggest party in the world of the Jewish people takes place in Meron every year, although this year, because of last year's tragedy, it'll be much less people. But there's usually about 600,000, they say 600,000 Jews, 500,000, 600,000. So bigger than Woodstock, gathering together in Meron to celebrate the life of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, the Rashbi, which is interesting. We're celebrating his life on the day he passed away. What's that all about? So there's two main things we're celebrating on Lag BaOmer: the death, the life of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who passed away on Lag BaOmer, as well as the plague that killed the students of Rabbi Akiva. That ended on Lag BaOmer as well. What is Lag? Lag is Lamed Gimel, which is the numerical value of 33. It will be the 33rd day of the Omer. So it's called Lag BaOmer, the 33rd day of the Omer. It's also always on Chai Iyar, the life of Iyar, Yud Ches Iyar, the 18th of Iyar. Right now we're going into the 17th of Iyar right now. For those of you that are on the East Coast, Midwest, United States. So it's on Chai Iyar, the life of Iyar. So it's very apropos with Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. So there's two reasons to celebrate, but the main one we really focus on is the Yom Hilula, as Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai called it. What is Yom Hilula? A Yom Hilula literally is a wedding day. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who was an amazing Tana from the Tanaic period, he lived the 2nd century, if you want to really know, 2nd century, around the year 200. He's a very famous student, Rabbi Akiva, amongst others, and his son, Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Elazar. Oh, Eliezer. Come on, who's helping me out over here? Many famous students. Anyway, so very famous story is he had to run away. We talked about it in Rabbi Schneer's class. He had to run away because he spoke negatively against the Romans. So yeah, they wanted to kill him. And he had to run away to a cave, and he lived in there for basically 10 years. He was there for 10 years, buried himself together with his son. He buried himself in sand so he wouldn't ruin his clothing. All they ate was a carob tree that grew and drank water that grew right outside the cave, and water that, a spring that just came up, and they drank water. As my old Rosh Hashiva would say, not a bad diet. He was a big man. Not a bad diet. And they would study Torah the entire time. And it came to be about 10 years, and they came back out, and it was obviously a big celebration. But the day he was going to pass away, he said to everybody, don't mourn, celebrate. It's a Yom Hilula. It's a wedding day. Why a wedding day? What is a wedding day? What is a wedding? I know we spoke about it before. A wedding, why do we celebrate a wedding in Judaism? The concept of a wedding, by the way, is really a Jewish concept, from what I understand. But what's the celebration? What's the celebration all about? So what happens is, before the soul descends into this world, it's one soul, and as it descends into the world, which means it becomes more physical, more concrete, right? It moves through the 4 worlds, and there's many worlds within each world, if you want to get into the Kabbalah. And it becomes more concrete. The soul splits in half. One soul goes into a male, one soul goes into a female. One part of the soul goes into a male and a female. It can be anywhere in the world. And then they reunite. They're reunited. And we're celebrating the soul's reunification. And now it's able to create more souls. What's happening? What happens when a soul departs this physical world? It leaves the body. The body decays into the earth from which it came. We're called Adam, from Adama, which means dirt and earth. That's our physical part of our body. So it goes back into the earth, and we let it, decay until Mashiach comes, and it'll be enlivened once again. And then the soul ascends through the worlds, and it goes back up. And as it goes back up to its source, deeper and deeper into God's essence, deeper parts within Hashem, it's being malava, it's being escorted by all these angels and spiritual beings that are celebrating. And what are they celebrating? It's a big party. Excited. And it says the day of a tzaddik's passing, it's the zenith of his entire work, all of his good deeds, all of his mitzvahs, all of his teachings, they all come in full glory and full swing, and they have a tremendous impact on the world at that moment. And the soul is reuniting itself with its lover, with Hashem. The soul, neshama, is feminine, and Hashem is masculine. So it's a reunification of the two lovers, as King Solomon talks about, and it's one big party. And who revealed that to us? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And where did he reveal that? He's the author of the most famous Kabbalistic work, the most fundamental work, the Zohar. He wrote the Zohar. The Zohar teaches us what is it like from God's perspective. I'm sorry, I'm not sharing my screen, am I? From God, not that anything like weird just popped up. It was Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Yeah, he was author of the Zohar, which is the fundamental work of everything. Now, there are certain customs that we do. So we celebrate even till today. Jews have always celebrated in Meron, where he's buried. There are people that live there. I've been to Meron, but I've not on Lag BaOmer. I went there. You can walk from Tzfas to Meron, Yochai, whatever. It's a certain village. It takes a couple hours. It's very nice. And we have a few customs that we do on Lag BaOmer. First of all, since it's a big party, as you know, I think we spoke about briefly in Halacha class some time ago, we have a tradition not to listen to music during the Omer period. Now, most people everybody listens to music on Lag BaOmer because it's a day of celebration. And why don't we listen to music? Because we're in a state of mourning, so to speak. We're like mourners because we're mourning the death of Rabbi Akiva's students, which we'll talk about in a moment. And so therefore, a mourner is not allowed to listen to music because he's not allowed to, or she, they're not allowed to dance and feel a certain level of joy. It's a muted joy. So we don't listen to music except on Lag BaOmer, because that's when the students stop passing. That's what Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai told us to have a party. So we celebrate then. And we listen to music. And most Jews will continue to listen to music after Lag BaOmer. Chabad has a custom to push it off even until Shavuos. We don't listen to live music, especially. Certainly not live music. Because in the Gemara and the Talmud, it's not very clear whether the students of Rabbi Akiva stopped dying, ceased from passing away on Lag BaOmer, and then continued after Lag BaOmer was over until Shavuos, or they was completely done, like completely ceased by Lag BaOmer. So which is unlike Chabad, because we usually find every reason to celebrate and be joyful, but we have a custom to not continue to listen to music. If that's not your custom, then don't do it. First of all, come back to Rabbi Akiva, but why did the students of Rabbi Akiva pass away? Because they didn't have respect for one another. They didn't have Avas Yisrael, which is kind of interesting because Rabbi Akiva was all about you should love your fellows yourself. But their love that they had for another, full of ego. Yeah, I love this person. This was the conversation. You have to. I saw what you did over there, and just because I love you, I want to tell you the right way to do it. Something's walking around over here. And so therefore, everyone's ego started getting in the way, and they started just correcting one another. He was always one-upping you, trying to correct you. So that's the, my internet connection is that was what happened, and they got very egotistical, and because they really didn't have true Avos Yisrael, their ego got in the way. They weren't very selfless. God brought on a plague because he said we have to put a stop to it. Okay, now there's a few, and it's going to they tie into each other. These two concepts of what Rabbi Akiva's students and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. On Lag BaOmer, we have a few customs. We have bonfires. Kids bring out bows and arrows, and we have music and dancing. But what's the idea of the bow and arrow? Why does everybody have a bow and arrow? The word for bow is keshet, which is the same word for a rainbow. It says during the entire life of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, there was no rainbow. Why is that significant? Because what was the why did God introduce the rainbow? So after the flood, God told Noah, I promise I'll never destroy the world. And when I have a desire to destroy the world, I will put a sign into the sky, and you will know that I'm not going to destroy the world. Even though right now, at this moment, I do have a desire to destroy the world. And that sign was a rainbow. So a lot of Jews actually have the custom, when a rainbow is in the sky, to not look at it at all. Chabad has the custom to look at it briefly, and we say a special blessing, but not stare. During the entire life of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, says the Talmud, a rainbow never appeared. So to commemorate the fact that during his lifetime a rainbow never appeared, we have a bow and arrow. We shoot bows and arrows to represent rainbows, and the fact that the rainbow was never there, which is like kind of dark because we don't have Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai anymore, and we see rainbows once again. So the Rebbe says, the Lubavitcher Rebbe says, there must be a positive reason for the fact that we still have this custom of a bow and arrow. Not a negative reason, but a positive reason. And if you look inside the Zohar itself, the Zohar says, nowadays, the rainbow is the colors are very weak. It's a very weak color. The Zohar says that was the sign that God showed Noah. This, like the rainbow as we see it today. Yeah, it's not, you can't see it perfectly. The Roy G. Biv, red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. You don't see it so clearly. But it says when Mashiach comes, when the redemption will be heralded, a sign that the redemption is here, it'll be an extremely bright rainbow in the sky. The Rebbe says that's the real reason why we have the rainbow, because it's an opportune time for Mashiach to come. And who revealed that to us? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Another reason why we have a rainbow. The rainbow ties in, not a rainbow. Why do we have a bow and arrow on Lag BaOmer? So the Rebbe talks about the difference between a bow and arrow and a sword. Both are used in battle. The idea of a sword, though, the sword is for an up-close battle. You see the enemy, it's very conspicuous, it's very clear, and you do what you need to do. And you know exactly, and there's a lot of handling, it's easy to handle, and you can attack your enemy with a very methodical, with a lot of conviction, and it works out very well. The bow and arrow, on the other hand, is for long distance fighting, where the enemy is distant from you. It's much more elusive. Things are less clear. It's more subtle. The fight is more subtle. It's quick movements. There's got to be a lot of it. The Rebbe says That's the same thing in our avodas Hashem, in our service to, in our help and our attitude towards another person. And it ties in very well to Rabbi Akiva. When a person has an ego, yeah, they're full. It's a very close combat type of thing. When two people that have an ego, they fight each other. It's very hard to serve Hashem that way. It's very bloody. It's a much stronger war. It's much more clear if you hear from the bow and arrow. From the bow and arrow's perspective, on the other hand, the bow and arrow is all about it's all about the distance. You want to try to get distance. And the way you gain distance is by moving the arrow back, by removing the ego, pushing the ego back. Then you can get your desired target much more clearly and accurately, and have its desired effect by removing the ego. And that's what the Rebbe says is the connection with Rabbi Akiva and his students, that they should have removed their ego. Yeah, it's not all about telling the other person what to do. In other words, the attitude Rabbi Akiva should have had was, if you have a proper attitude and ego's not in the way, if you want to hear someone else's advice, you're glad to hear someone else's advice, especially no matter what stature they are, whether they're higher or lower than you, you'll listen to it and you'll be receptive and you'll decide whether it really fits. And especially if they can correct me, I'll feel very glad that they did, because it's all about me serving Hashem. It's not about my own service. It's about Hashem, really. That's what it's about. It's about Hashem. That's the idea of the representative of the rainbow. The bow and arrow. The bow and arrow removes the self. It moves the self back and allows room for accuracy and to deal with the more subtleties of life. And that's especially true why we have children. Why children play with it, because that's the best time to educate children about. It's about a service of Hashem. It's not about you. I remember Shais Taub was once verbringing with me and a few of our friends, and he said, humility is not thinking less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. I always like that line. Less of yourself. It's about thinking of yourself less. It's not about you. It's not about me. Siyam HaRambam. Okay, so I want to talk a little bit about the Siyam HaRambam. Siyam means completion of the Rambam. We have in Chabad a daily cycle. You either learn, there's 3 tracks the Rebbe instituted. You can either learn 3 chapters a day of Rambam, and you'll complete the Rambam in less than a year. You can learn 1 chapter a day, and it'll take you 3 years. Or you can learn Sefer HaMitzvot. The Rambam compiled all of the 613 mitzvot, and you can learn, 1 or 2 every single day. And you learn Rambam. Why do we learn Rambam? So there's a concept, we have a mitzvah to learn the entire Torah. Now, for most of us, that's pretty hard to do, to learn all of the Gemaras, the Talmud, Yerushalmi, to learn from the Chumash all the way to Halacha and everything in between. It takes a very long time, and it takes a special kind of head and the ability to grasp things quickly and efficiently. So the Rebbe says, what is the Rambam? What was unique about the Rambam, especially the Rambam's work of Mishnah Torah? That's what we're talking about. What the Rambam did, he codified the entire Torah, everything. If you look in Shulchan Aruch, it doesn't talk about laws of Mashiach or the laws of bringing sacrifices or the laws of Tuma and Tahara, purities and impurities. It only talks about whatever is pertinent to today. So you're not going to, how are you going to learn all the other ideas in Torah? So says the Rebbe, you should learn the Rambam, because you're learning every aspect of Torah. It's the only place we see that the entire Torah is encapsulated in one body of work. Now, in a practical way. So first it was instituted by Chabad. Obviously, Chabad Hasidim, we learn it every day. I do 3 a day, 3 chapters a day, and it's amazing. If you want to learn the entire Torah, it is amazing. The most efficient, amazing way to learn every concept in Torah that you wouldn't even think of. We have a big celebration tomorrow night around the world, and it's spilled over to other yeshiva people in Lakewood who are not Hasidim, non-Hasidic Jews learn Rambam every day now. many. And this is even more comprehensive to a certain extent than the Daf Yomi. Because at the end of the day, in the Daf Yomi, well, it's not everyone learns. Most people don't learn Daf Yomi. Like you learn one page of Gemara every day. Most Jews in the world do not, even from Jews, religious Jews, do not learn Daf Yomi every single day for a few reasons. But one of which it's not going to be in the entire Torah. It's the Gemara, it's the Mishnah and the Talmud, fine. But it's not the halacha, it's not the practical, the end result of everything. And plus you're leaving out the Yerushalmi, the other Talmud, and it's not going to have the whole comprehensive everything, the whole backing. Yeah, it's not having the whole entire. There's another 2,000 years of Torah. To the Rambam, there's another 800 years of Torah that was innovative that we're not going to capture in the Talmud Yerushalmi, in the Talmud Bavli. I'm not shooting down the Gemara, obviously. I'm not shooting down Talmud, but it cannot take its place. You cannot replace the Rambam's what he's done, which is absolutely incredible. He originally wrote it down in Arabic, and he had somebody else translate it into Hebrew. The Rambam had a very tough life. He had to leave Spain. He grew up in Spain. He had to leave because of the certain Muslim group came to take over. They were on the run, and his father died while they were traveling. He was in Tunisia, and they went to Morocco. And his brother became somewhat of a successful merchant, so it allowed the Rambam to focus on Torah study because he was a prodigy, obviously. And he supported him. And then one day, his brother shipwrecked, and he died. And all the fortune went down. The Rambam had to work. And he became a doctor. And he was a very good doctor. So good that he was recruited by the Sultan in Egypt. He worked for the king of Egypt. He was his personal doctor, and obviously extremely busy. And when the Rambam would sign off his name in a letter, he would write letters. I mean, he was the authority, especially in Sephardic Jewry. He was certainly the Mashiach of the generation, the leader of the generation. He would sign off, when he was living in Egypt, he would sign off Moshe ben Maimon, one who sins every day by living in the land of Egypt. The Rambam says there are 3 reasons why we cannot live in the land of Egypt. We just had it in Rambam a few days ago, and he lived in Egypt. He stayed in Egypt. We're not supposed to go back and live in Egypt, but he did. He lived in Egypt, and he would sign off saying the sinner who lived in Egypt. And he lived there, and there were a lot of Jews there, and he said that he would, from day and night, he would see patients. And the only time, and when he was seeing patients, not just the king, but other patients, other people, all day and all night, he would do it for free. Hopefully get a donation or 2. He would be dictating the entire Talmud. He would be dictating his Mishnah Torah, his work, to somebody else who was writing it down as he was sewing up a patient. He said, the only time I ever studied Torah, he goes, I was exhausted. I would sleep 1 hour a night. He writes about his life. And he said, the only time I had respite, the only time I was able to study Torah was on Shabbos. Was when I did his entire Torah study. So a man who had no time to really study Torah codified the entire Torah. We're talking about a different level of genius over here. It's not normal. Moving on. Anybody have any questions? Am I still here? Am I still on? Yeah. Anybody go? Okay. Moving on to Parshas Behar. Just quickly. So anyway, there's a big party tomorrow night. Check it out. We finished the book of Rambam. Obviously coincides with Lag BaOmer. No, it doesn't coincide with Lag BaOmer. It's Erev Lag BaOmer. I'm sure on Chabad.org there'll be a big party. And we restart it. We end it, and then we make one big circle. We don't say we completed the book of Rambam. We just read the last words, and now we're going to read the first words. So if you want to start, now's a good time to start. Okay, Parshas Behar deals mainly with the Shemitah year and the Yovel year. The most difficult commandment, some would say, is Shemitah. The most difficult commandment to follow is Shemitah, which we're in a Shemitah year. What is Shemitah? When we let the land lay fallow. You're not allowed to work the land, till the land, do any of that sort. Obviously, it's extremely difficult. especially back in the day. Nowadays, it's not so hard. First of all, most Jews are not in agriculture, but back in the day, we were. That was our source, especially when we went into the land of Israel. We were all farmers, basically. And God says, okay, here comes the seventh year. You're going to have to let it, can't touch it anymore. Can't eat from it. Can't work it. So you can understand that people were a little bit nervous, and they would gather fruits and grains in the sixth year to handle the seventh year. And they also hoped that it would last till the eighth year, because they didn't do any work in the seventh year to make it happen in the eighth year. So it's really like a 3-year sacrifice. And in fact, God says, when you will say, what will I eat? For 3 years, I will bless you. Now, that line in this week's Parsha, when you will say, God is not angry, Rashi says. God isn't angry, saying you weak, you have no faith. It's talking about a real frum person, a real believer, ehrliche Yid, as we say in Yiddish, a real believer in Judaism and in Hashem and Torah. And God says that person will say, how is this going to work? And Rashi's saying that the guy is not saying it in a bad way. He's saying, I believe in everything. I'm just curious, like, how is this going to work? Like, God, tell me, like, how's this all going to work? And God says, it's all one big blessing. I'm going to basically show you a miracle. There was a story about, I guess, at last 7 years ago, when the last Shemitah year. So there were, not every farmer in Israel is a observant Jew, a Torah observant Jew. And so there was a couple, a husband and a wife, who had a farm. And came I think they had a hechsher, they had a the koshering agency in Israel gave like the go-ahead that their crops were kosher. But then it was coming for Shemitah. The Shemitah year was coming. And the koshering agency said, okay, you have to let the land lay fallow. You can't work the land. And they're like, what are you talking about? And they said, well, if you don't do it, they said it's clearly written in the Torah, and if we still follow it till today. If you don't do it, we have to revoke our kosher, certification from you. And they're like, well, we're not going to do it. And so other farmers came to them and said, do it. We promise everything will work out. We'll make it work for you. We'll help you. Everything's going to go. And they're like, we're not going to do it. We're not going to do it. And they finally were convinced that they'll do it. And it was going to wipe. And if it didn't work 1 year, it was going to wipe out their entire everything. What happened? There was they had like a specific crop that they did, I don't know, like kiwis or something. And something that I think if you don't really take care of, it will never come back. So they were basically thought like, this is the end of our business and we'll do it and we'll whatever. But it's like, there's no hope at the end of our business. There was some sort of drought or something in Australia, wherever like kiwis, where we get a lot of kiwis, maybe in Central America, a lot of, there was like some sort of drought and there was like a huge kiwi problem. And the country came to them and said, we will pay you triple, right before Shemitah, we'll pay you triple the amount of that we would normally buy kiwis for. So yeah, so they basically they were able to cover for the next 3 years. Whatever, it's a very well-known story, and they were like blown away. Now, not every farmer has such a miracle story. In Shemitah, like we spoke about earlier, when Shemitah started in Rosh Hashanah time, there are funds. I gave money. A lot of people give money to the farmers for that year to be able to, we basically supplement their income. We make up their income for them. It's a big mitzvah. Anyway, so Shemitah is a very big mitzvah. It's a very difficult mitzvah to do, especially back in the day. But people would do it. Obviously, Jews would do it. We've always been doing it. And it opens up, and it says it opens up with this mitzvah in this week's parsha, the mitzvah of Shemitah. And Rashi says, why does the parsha open up about this mitzvah? Because why does it open up with this mitzvah? Because Rashi says this is just like this mitzvah was said, just like the 10 Commandments were said by Mount Sinai during the giving of the Torah. So, in all of its details, So was Shemitah. Shemitah was said, so I'm sorry, just like Shemitah, the mitzvah of Shemitah was said at Mount Sinai and all of its details, so were all mitzvahs said at Mount Sinai with all of its details. It says, Behar means on the mountain. On which mountain? The mountain of Mount Sinai. We were talking about the giving of the Torah. This takes place during the time of the giving of the Torah. And it gets into the details of Shemitah. And the question is, why does the Torah single out the mitzvah of Shemitah? Why is Shemitah like the fundamental template? Why is it the template for all the other mitzvahs said at Mount Sinai? And the answer is Shemitah has this component of what a mitzvah truly embodies. Shemitah is very difficult. It's a very physically demanding mitzvah, like we said before. But yet it still has this aspect. God says it's like Shabbos. You let the land lay like Shabbos. And Shabbos is the most sublime moment in time in creation. So it encompasses both of these extremes of physical labor and extreme and details and physical difficulty, and yet the most sublime ecstatic moment in all of creation. And the Torah says that is exactly how every mitzvah truly is. There's really it's the most concrete, physical. Every mitzvah is very concrete, very physical, and has many details. And it can only work, the mitzvah, the kedusha, the holiness of a mitzvah can only work if you follow all of the physical details necessary. To fill in, if you decide to make them black, if you decide to make them blue, are not going to work. They have to be black, and they have to be a certain length, and they have to be square. Tzitzis have to be from a certain type of wool. It has to be wool or cotton, and it has to be tied in a certain way. I don't know, whatever the other mitzvahs we can think of. They're very like detail oriented. But yet it says the Torah, it's only going to work. It's only going to become a proper vessel for the kedusha, for the or, for the revelation, if the devil's in the details. If you do all the details correctly. Moving, I'm just looking through the parsha really quickly. Very interesting halacha, by the way. Talks a little bit about overcharging people in business. What's markup? We have inflation in America right now, inflation all over the world. What's proper markup? Says the Torah, you can have up to 18% markup. Some 18% or 20%. So it's like this. And if the person marks it up over market value over 20%, if the person selling is selling it above 20% market value, he has to give you your money back. Rambam says you have about a day to do it. So what happens if you buy it? You can check the price and come back to the guy. He has to give you back your money. So yeah, I go to a store, I go to a place, and I buy a mug, and I pay $13 for the mug. But then I'm walking away, and I meet my friend Yossi, and I say, Yossi, look at this mug I bought for $13. He says, $13? Everyone else is selling it for 10. So is that 13%? No, that's not 20% ever. It's for he sells it whatever. He's selling it $30. I buy it for $30, and he goes, well, everyone else is selling it for 10. So I'm like, what? That's ridiculous. So you have to go to a maven, you have to go to an expert and say, how much is market value? Yeah, you got to get it appraised. What's the market value of this mug? And the guy says it's only $10. I can go right back to the seller and say, you got to give me my money back. And I bet you that guy's reputation, that seller's reputation is going to be very bad. Let's see over here. First of all, anybody have any questions so far? Am I still on? Anybody still here? Okay. I don't want to get too much into Shemitah. It gets a little bit more esoteric, but I just want to say that going back to Lag BaOmer, it is a very special day, and it's a day not to be there is no special mitzvah to have a meal on that day. In Chabad, it talks about we do try to have a little bit more spirits if you're a person that says l'chaim or grape juice. Some of the rebbeim, the rabbis would have a custom to make a little bit of a meal. It's very important to participate in some sort of event, if there's any event, maybe even online, but it's very important to celebrate life, not just the life of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, but life in general. It's a day to celebrate life. And it's a day that we focus on, that we realize that life is not about our bodies. Life is about, the Zohar taught us that life is our soul. We are a godly entity having a physical experience. We're a spiritual being having a temporary physical experience. Now, it's an incredible opportunity. If you learn the Zohar, it's an incredible opportunity to live in this world and to struggle with what we struggle. I know that doesn't sound so great, to have struggles. We don't want struggles, but there is a tremendous opportunity. The soul experiences no struggle. The angels, the malachim, they look on high and they say, we cannot fulfill any of these mitzvahs because we have no struggle with a yetzer hara. We have no struggle with a human side, an animal side. And the Torah is talking all about that, about trying to overcome the animal and refine it, refine the human, the world, the physical world, this physicality, this anything that negates godliness. This is the only time we have an opportunity to take advantage of that and to realize who we are and that we're really one entity. At our core, the Zohar teaches that we're all really one entity. The Rambam himself says, do you have to be I've shared this many times. Do you have to be a Kohen, priestly Jew to be the most, that's like the pinnacle of life, to be the Kohen Gadol, so to speak? The Rambam says, no, that's not what the Torah says. The Torah doesn't say you have to be a priest to be the most, a servant of God and to reach the depths of everything and to give God true joy and fulfillment of what our mission really is. God, the Rambam says every single person, Jew or non-Jew, has that opportunity, because it's all about you deal with whatever comes our way, whatever comes my way. That's my responsibility to deal with. Now, it's not just a physical obstacle. Most of the struggles are psychological. They're mental. Like we say in the beginning of the Haggadah, this year we're free. This year we're slaves. Next year may we be free. What are we talking about? We left Egypt 3,300 years ago. Yeah, we left the physical Egypt 3,300 years ago, but now the real work begins. We got a mental and spiritual Egypt that we're constantly fighting. And once in a while, we have a physical Egypt that we have to fight, whether it's Russia, it's Germany, Rome, Greece, whatever it is. But we also have and then it leaves its psychological impact on us and our future generations. And that's what we have to struggle with. And God says that I put you in a particular situation, in a particular place, with particular struggles, from a particular family, in friends and jobs and everything like that, for you to reveal the godliness in that place, for you to elevate, leave your mark, so to speak, leave your godly mark on that place, that selflessness, that holiness, that let me in. I let it be transparent, show that this place expresses the godliness. That was the gift of the Zohar. The Zohar taught us this and continues to teach it. And it's accepted by all of Jewry. And it always has been. It was a hush-hush little gem for a couple thousand years. But then the Jews said, now everyone needs to know it. We got to start explaining it. The leaders of the generation said, we have to explain this to everybody. This is not just for the elite. Now everyone can appreciate this because everyone's yearning for that the godliness, the spirituality. We can all appreciate it. And so we're ready for it. So l'chaim, to take advantage of it, of the days coming up. And I wish you a happy Lag BaOmer. No questions, anyway? I was muted the whole time. I'm just saying. Okay, fine with that. I wish you a good evening, everybody, whoever's there.
Thank you, Rabbi.
No problem.
Thank you. That was great.
Thanks, Alexandra. Good to see you. See you, Bella. Bye, Earth.